From one title-chasing Dutchman Arne Slot to another, Lewis Hamilton congratulated him on an amazing drive. Nico Hülkenberg called him the GOAT. It was a monumental victory for Max Verstappen in Brazil yesterday. In the wet, from 17th on the grid, it all but secured a fourth world title and crushed Lando Norris's hopes of a first. Abracadabra. Let's see how Martin Brundle rates the performance. He joins us live now. Well, Martin, Lando talked about Max being lucky yesterday. When he watches the race back, do you think he'll change that view?
Yes, I do think he will, because Max was in a class of one. Those conditions suit his talent level. The McLaren wasn't the fastest car in the rain, which is a bit surprising because they look so good in qualifying in wet conditions. But Max got unlucky with the safety car in qualifying. Sorry, with the red flag in qualifying. But he stayed out on track in the race and expected a safety car, a red flag situation. So he knew what to do, and then he just steamed off and won by 19 seconds at a canter. Really, it was a classic drive, and I think Formula One did really well to get the race underway and finished. Actually,
yeah, we're just watching Max make places off the line. Then that great overtake he managed to pull on Oscar Piastri. He can do things on track other drivers don't seem to do. But I want to look at Lando Norris and ask you, what has he lacked this year? 7 pole positions he's had. Only once in Singapore did he hold the lead at the end of lap 1. Is that one thing in particular he's got to correct?
Yeah, I think it's everything, at the level he's at. I mean, he's had some amazing victories, and not least in Zandvoort and Singapore, where he just ran off and hid, a little bit like Max yesterday. But he lacks the experience of challenging for a world championship, and I think that's a whole new set of challenges and rules, and that's what he will learn from this year. Sometimes you wonder if he lacks the killer instinct up against Max, who we know can be pretty brutal in combat. But I think Lando will learn a lot from this season, and I think Max winning 7 of the first 10 races pretty much put him out of reach, really. So if you add all that up together, there was always going to be, in these final few races, and Lando needed to take a chunk of points out of Max every single race and hope that there was his teammate and a Ferrari or two and even a Mercedes or two between them. But one turnaround, like yesterday in Brazil, and that little escapade was over by and large, and there's a lot of bizarre things happen now in the final races.
Yeah. But listen, there was a kind of self-confidence about what Max did yesterday. Maybe that's what you have when you're already a 3-time world champion. But there is a question about Lando's mental strength. You've alluded to it a little bit there. Can he work on that? And do you think McLaren, and I've heard a few people ask this, by being so even-handed with their drivers earlier in the year, did that subtly undermine Lando's self-belief or sense that he had the full backing of the team?
Absolutely not. Lando was very clear. I don't want to win a world championship because my teammate had to keep gifting me stuff here and there. And McLaren know that they can't just park a great talent like Oscar Piastri as the second in the team and having to yield at every opportunity, because it's really hard psychologically to get over that and to keep your credibility, reputation intact. So I think McLaren have learned a bit as well this year, sort of being front runners for the first time in a very, very long time. So, but I don't think they certainly haven't hampered Lando. I think they've given Lando every bit of support that he needed, and the car that's been very fast.
Okay, so he has these last 3 races. He's got to outscore Max in the next event to keep the championship going. How significant are these last 3 races for Lando Norris? And is it more important that he maybe puts one over Max, or does he really need to get a grip on things at McLaren and make himself clearly the number one there?
I think he just needs to extract the maximum out of himself and McLaren and his car and see how where he ends up, to be honest. I think if he starts focusing on one team or driver or the other, that's a lot of wasted energy. He needs to prepare himself for a championship challenge next year, which we know is going to be a season, an all-time classic, a season for the ages, because the cars have reached their peak of development and they've hit the ceiling a bit, and we know how close everything's going to be next year. So that's his focus. Just go as fast as he can, as long as he can, and see what happens. Anything else will just be a distraction.
One last topic, just to get you on, Martin. So much controversy about the racing rules heading into last weekend. Complaints about some of the decisions made by stewards when red flags were triggered or when they weren't. Do you think the whole business of governing a Grand Prix needs an overhaul, maybe with, as some have suggested, full-time professional stewards who pretty much work from race to race, or at least a small group of them governing the whole season, as it were, who maybe aren't allowed to speak to the media? Because that's been a question mark too.
The sports I really love have all got engines, basically. So that's all I know. But you know a lot better than I do with other sports like football and rugby and what have you. Do they have perfect refereeing systems? Is it all 100% sorted? What's absolutely clear is I think the multi-billion-dollar world of Formula One should have a professional, paid, rewarded set of stewards and referees. The trouble is, we've got 24 races that we just keep circling the world relentlessly. So finding somebody who can give up that kind of time, or even two groups, for example. But I think it needs to be put on a more professional footing, yes, and more consistent footing. But it's a really fast-moving, dangerous business, and race control, I think, by and large, do an extremely good job of managing that. And you've got the international sporting code, the drivers' guidelines, the sporting regulations, directives we don't even get to see in the media, and then the race director's final instructions for the weekend, which still also get updated as weekend goes on. It's a minefield, and it does need. We try to stay on top of it in commentary, but it does seem as if it needs a more stable, properly rewarded set of stewards. Yeah, and I'm not decrying the stewards at all. That is not a job I would want ever, to be honest, because it's a miserable task they've got. Because every incident, every accident has got it's got a twist in the tail somewhere. So, like any other sport, it needs a referee's interpretation and opinion somewhere along the line.
Listen, Martin, great to talk to you, and look forward to seeing you at the next race out in Las Vegas.
Can't wait to get there.